I think that any conversation that begins with the words, "do for us whatever we ask of you," is bound to head in a bad direction. Uh, and this is one of those Gospels that I think can really take a little bit of unpacking. And so I want to begin by talking a little bit about a story. See, back when I was younger, some of you may have heard I had a birthday recently, and so I'm now a little bit older. But back when I was the age of 13, I started spending my summers with my dad doing landscaping and yard work. And this was a big deal for me at the time, because one, it meant I got a little bit of an income. I got to do some work with my dad, which was fun. But it also meant that on all of our trips going out, I got to sit in the front seat. And this is the big thing, because I didn't always get to sit in the front seat when my family was going places. And so I got to, quote unquote, ride shotgun. And, you know, shotgun is great because you have more leg room. If you don't know this, the windows in the front seat go all the way down, not stopping halfway like the back seat windows. You can see where the car is going. You get to sit next to the driver. Tons of perks. But what 13-year-old me did not understand is that shotgun also came with responsibilities. In fact, the term shotgun, it's not just something that those kids came up with. It is a term that has a long tradition. It is referring to the person who rode next to the stagecoach drivers in the Old West who would carry shotgun in hand to protect the goods and the people who were in the stagecoach with them. There was a heavy responsibility for the person who rode shotgun. And for me, I didn't fully recognize that. See, I wanted to spend my time in the front seat doing the things that I loved to do. Namely, playing Pokemon on my Game Boy, or reading my Harry Potter books, or anything else I was reading at the time. But as I began to do that, my dad looked over at me and said, "Oh no, you have a job to do," and he handed me the Road Atlas. See, I was not merely a front passenger with all of those amenities, I was now also the navigator. And that was a great deal of responsibility for a 13-year-old because, you know, landscaping rigs do not make three-point turns very easy. So you got to make sure you know where you're going. And sitting in that seat with my dad meant that I was a part of this driving team. My dad did the driving, kept us alive, didn't run us into things, and I got us to our destination. And I believe our gospel reading today tells a story of what can happen when people don't understand the true meaning of riding shotgun. See, over the last few weeks, we've had a very similar pattern of events emerge in our Gospels from Mark. Jesus tells the disciples, in secret when he's alone with them, that he is going to be betrayed, he is going to be tortured and killed, and then he is going to rise again from the dead. And then, immediately after he does this, the disciples do something really dumb. It's a pattern that continues to happen in Mark. The first time Jesus reveals this, Peter looks at him, rebukes Jesus, and then in turn, Jesus has the wonderful phrase, "Get behind me, Satan." The second time Jesus reveals this to them, the disciples, on the way to the home, they're going to begin arguing, well, who is the best one among us? And now, here in this final passage, having just been told by Jesus that his messianic identity is about suffering, is about death and resurrection, James and John ask Jesus if they can sit at his right and left hand in your glory. And I have to wonder what James and John have in mind. See, what does it mean for Jesus to be in his glory? At the time, to sit at one's right or left hand was a place of honor. It meant that you were important enough to be considered to be seated next to the person who is the host or the most prominent person there. So maybe they had some royal throne room in their head with, Jesus in the main seat and them, his royal advisors to his right and left. Maybe it was a large banquet table and they would be sitting in the places of honor next to Jesus. And I have to wonder, did they not listen to anything Jesus has been saying for days? See, the disciples are given a front view seat. They get to sit in the front to see where the car is going, but they still don't understand what's happening. For all of their insider knowledge, all of the benefits of riding shotgun, It seems that they are trying to navigate him someplace else, to a place that's anywhere but the suffering in Jerusalem that he's describing to them. But then as I mulled this text over, I also began to wonder if there wasn't something else happening here. Because I wonder what this gospel might tell us if James and John finally, as Jesus is explaining what is going to happen, if they finally let it sink in, if they finally understood Jesus is going to his death. See, it's one thing if they're just obtuse to this whole thing, but I wonder, what if this request to sit at the right and left has more to do with their fear than it has to do with their misunderstanding? What if these disciples aren't asking that Jesus go a different route, but asking for a promise that it will be worth going down the path that he is going on? What if they are asking that they're following him, that their suffering alongside of him might give them a reward? See, that there would be a place of honor for them when all of this is said and done. I'm wondering if maybe these sons of thunder aren't misguided, but instead fearful, insecure. They aren't thick-headed, but afraid. See, I think it's easy to laugh at the disciples' bumblings in Mark. I mean, I'll go ahead and tell you, in seminary, they will teach you in your first class on Mark, oh, Mark did not have a high opinion of the disciples. There is a good reason for it. But here, in this place, I think we can relate deeply even more to the fear that they might have. It's that same fear and that same worry that last week made the rich man walk away with his great wealth because he was afraid of what it would mean to give it up to follow Jesus. And we don't always run from suffering, but we aren't just doing it for nothing. You know, we want there to be something for us at the end. When you go to the gym to work out, you want to have good health because of it. Maybe you don't need that six-pack abs, but you want to at least be healthy. See, we want there to be a reason for our suffering, a prize to make things worthwhile. And it's not that uncommon to find someone who has the drive and the ambition to sacrifice and work hard to acquire something, whether that is wealth, prestige, or honor, to give themselves and sacrifice for a life of glory. You know, they say the average CEO works 100 hours a week, nonstop. You give up your family, you give up the relationships to have these jobs of honor and this wealth. And if this is the path that Jesus is talking and taking the disciples to, then the disciples, if they're going to drink that cup, they're going to be baptized with that baptism, they want there to be a reason for it. They want it to be worthwhile. They want to share in Jesus' glory. See, I think that they understood that Jesus was going to die, but they had a mistake when it came to understanding where Jesus' glory would be shown. See, they understood maybe this banquet hall, this royal throne room, but the Bible is very clear when it speaks of the two people who were at the left and right of Jesus in his glory. Mark chapter 15 says, "And with him they crucified two bandits, one on his right and one on his left." The two people who experienced Christ's glory firsthand, who were there in Jesus' glory, crucified next to him. See, these two bandits learned what it meant to be beside Jesus in his glory, to go where he was going. Because the hierarchy of God doesn't work like the world's does. See, in the hierarchy of God, in God's kingdom, bottom is top and top is bottom. Glory is found in the actions of a servant, not in someone who lords it over them. In particular, a suffering servant on the cross. See, in the kingdom of God, glory is not the reward for one's service. Instead, service is the sign of one's glory. Jesus is, as he tells James and John after their request, a servant Messiah. And to follow a servant Messiah means to be a servant oneself, to live our lives seeking not the glory of this world, but the glory of Christ. And as Jesus spoke to James and John, I believe he also speaks to us. When he says to them, "The cup that I will drink, you will drink, and the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized." When he says that, Jesus reassures them, "You have this fear now, but you will overcome it. You will overcome your need for a reward, your need for glory and to be raised up. They are going to follow where he is going, and they will be faithful to the end." And this is the good news for us here today, that we too share in Christ's glory. We drink of Christ's cup, and we are baptized into his baptism. It is both blessing and calling. We will suffer. All of us here will die. See, the thing about life is that none of us get out alive, not even Jesus. We all share that cup with Christ. But through it, we don't just experience the redemption of creation, we're invited to participate in it. We're invited to be a part of it. See, Jesus' mission, his reason for the cross was to reunite a broken existence with its creator. And that affects everything, every person, everywhere. And here we are, caught up in the vastness of what God is doing, the vastness of God's saving grace. And through it, we are blessed and empowered to be a blessing, called to seek after a different kind of glory. We are empowered through our baptism and vocation as a child of God to be a part of this redemptive work. And we are given the opportunity then to ride shotgun, to ride with Jesus as he goes towards the rejuvenation of all things. And by the glory of Christ, we can help navigate where this message of redemption is going to go. Christ brings us life, and we can help bring that same life into the world. So may the fear not only of the unknown, but also of the known, not keep us from living faithfully into this calling. And most of all, may we understand that the one who calls us to be servant, who calls us to seek after a different kind of glory, was first a servant for us. Amen.